police are noticing more people experiencing homelessness in local parks. A local homeless advocate says he's seeing the same thing. Fox 5's Mike Allen joining us live now from Easy Valley Park to explain what's happening and why.
Well, Jacqueline, this is actually a situation that I noticed quite by accident. I was here last week at Joe Shung Park on the east side of the valley, and it's when I noticed something that I'm going to step out and show you now because it's happening tonight. It's a group of folks that are hanging out outside and inside the public bathrooms, and as we pan to the left here, you'll see even more folks hanging by the public tables over there. And of course, when the park closes at 11, they have to leave. So when 11 o'clock hit last week, when I was here, I asked the police who cleared them out in anticipation for the next morning's ceremony if this issue is getting worse. And they said it is. After clearing out the bathrooms and outdoor tables after hours at Joe Shung Park last week, officers with the Clark County Police Office of Public Safety left. I left shortly afterward, but not before seeing several of those folks come right back to the park.
It does put you in a difficult sort of situation, though, when you think about it, because it is a public park, right? So you're not allowed to sleep in the park. That's a rule.
It's a sticky situation for people experiencing homelessness, plus the police who patrol the parks where they congregate, and the people in charge of outreach services. Maureen Groneman, the supervisor of Clark County's Family Services Program, faces this challenge all the time.
It's really tricky because you can't say, I'm sorry, you appear to be homeless, you can't use the bathroom.
I talked with the head of another local homeless outreach organization about what happens after those folks get cleared out of parks if they don't go to a shelter.
If they can live in a tent and survive, that's the way it is. And a lot of the veterans, sometimes they choose to live out there because they was trained to live outside, and sometimes it's a mental health issue.
Thomas Randall runs Straight from the Streets. He helps get proper IDs for people experiencing homelessness so they can get access to services, among many other things.
We do survival kits. You got a resource list, shirt, toilet paper, top ramen.
Randall has also noticed a big increase in our homeless population in the valley and agrees that public parks are a magnet. But the shelter that parks provide is not enough to stop death from exposure in many folks, and he says that's happening much more often now.
Over 20 years ago, I remember the highest was like 56. Now it's 240 of last year, and the year prior was 239.
In the face of this growing problem, both Randall and Groneman are looking to tackle it with their respective programs.
It works sometimes really well, and sometimes it partially works, and sometimes it's just not what they need.
We can keep up the good fight if we work together.
Now, if you'd like to have one of those kits to give to people you encounter who might need some help, I've got a link with information to do that on our website, fox5vegas.com. Reporting live tonight from Joe Shung Park in the East Valley, Mike Allen, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
About a quarter of all homeless deaths over the past year have been people over the age of 60.